We have a quorum. The agenda was properly posted, so you can all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This time we'll take nominations for Chairman Pro Temp for tonight's meeting.
I'll nominate Kyle Crum.
Second.
Okay. Take a vote.
Aye.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, going to number 5.
That's clever.
Public appearances, public's opportunity to speak about any subject that is not an agenda item. Does anybody want to bring up sheets for speaking for any agenda items? Okay, moving on. Number 6, approve the minutes of the Plan Commission meeting on December 9th, 2015.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, we'll go to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'll abstain.
Any extensions? 1? Okay. Motion passes. Number 7, public hearing, public's opportunity to comment on a conditional use permit application from Rainbow Child Care Center for a group daycare center, 9+ students, land use on parcel number 0711043000502, bounded by County Highway N to the east, School Road to the north, and North Windsor Ave on the west.
Okay. I think the best way to do this would be to have the applicant come up and walk us through the project. Maybe Travis and I will go through our staff reports, and that might answer any questions the public might have ahead of time, and then we can have anyone who wants to talk come up and talk. But this is right up there is fine.
Perfect.
This is Kevin Yeska from JSD Professional Services representing the applicant.
Yep. Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. Representing Rainbow Child Care Center, Krieger Klatt Architects, and Orman Engineering. I apologize. I thought that there would be a projector here today, but I'll walk you through the site plan as best we can. Did bring some elevations for the building. Rainbow Child Care Center is a national child care provider. They have over 100 locations throughout the nation, and they are currently diving into the Wisconsin market. We're working with them on a number of other projects in the area, Muskego and Madison in particular. Their number one goal as a child care provider and having their reputation as a good child care provider is the safety of the children. They like to produce a high quality aesthetic of their buildings, and then also a high quality aesthetic of the interior of their buildings, as well as the exterior play spaces for the children to enjoy. Things like play structures, sodded lawns, and a splash pad for hot summer days for them to play within. On the interior of the building, they're a combination of classrooms as well as a gymnasium, and they like to incorporate a healthy meal option into their hours of operation. Their hours of operation do range from 6 a.m. in the morning to 6:30 p.m., with peak drop-off times being between 6 a.m. and 9:30 a.m., and then also approximately 3:30 p.m. you'll see parents begin to pick up their children up until the time that they close at 6:30. Outside play typically happens, or will not happen until 9:30 in the morning, and then will range until about 3:30 in the afternoon. In speaking to the site plan, we are proposing a parking lot on the west side of the building, along with a parking lot on the north side of the building, proposing a total of 38 parking stalls. For a daycare center in the zoning code of the Village of Windsor, we are required to have 36 parking stalls, so we are 2 over that maximum. The client feels that the amount of parking that they have there is a good number, but the more they can get, the better. It does help with the size of the lot. The larger that you can get the lot, the better, just because it'll help in the traffic flow and the movement of parents picking up their children, entering and exiting the site. In terms of a couple of constraints that we are dealing with on the site, one being on the east side of the site along County Highway N, we are dealing with a 23-foot utility easement as well as a 10-foot landscape buffer easement per the plat. Those areas we have, our client is trying to maximize their play spaces as much as possible. That's very important for them to get their minimum number of parking stalls, but then also maximize the play spaces, the outdoor play spaces. So what that has essentially proposed us to do is provide play area structures within the 23-foot utility easement, which I know that is a conflict with the village's comments that we've received back, and then also MSA's comments that we've received back. We are looking for an exemption and potentially trying to come to write an agreement that would allow play structures, including the toddler play structure, the awning, and the 5-foot tall ornamental fence to be proposed within that 23-foot utility easement, under the condition that if a utility company ever went through there and needed to do work, Rainbow would be responsible for removing those structures, getting them out of the way, and then replacing them once construction has completed. On the south side of the site, you'll notice on the site plan there is a splash pad proposed. This will be utilized during the summer months, hotter summer months, for all age groups. Nice aesthetic for the site and for the children to play in. In terms of landscaping, we are using a variety of native species, combination of large deciduous trees, evergreen trees, mostly columnar upright evergreens, and then also a mixture of perennials and ornamental grasses to accent the front of the building. We are within the zoning code requirements for the landscaping on this project, and we're providing quite a bit of screening around the parking lot to screen the parking lot headlights from County Highway N, and then also School Road to the north, as well as Windsor Avenue to the west.
Kevin? It's one of the benefits to having the meeting postponed. You guys got another chance to go through some of our initial comments, so a lot of the things that we called out the first time around have already been taken care of. We do have a few recommendations. As far as the certified survey map, we'd recommend that be approved. The conditional use permit, we would also recommend that that be approved. The only potential negatives you would see, as you said, there are some cyclical traffic times, but that's really no different than other businesses like a restaurant or something like that. The other potential negative, kids make noise, but they would make noise at a park, they would make noise in a school. I don't see that as a huge problem here. And you're also limiting the number of kids that go out there. It's one classroom at a time, is that
correct? One classroom at a time. To touch on the number of students right now, we are anticipating approximately 115. That number could fluctuate slightly based on Wisconsin state standards for what will be licensed at a later date.
Okay. As far as the site plan, we had a couple of planning conditions. One that, per our ordinance, any fencing that occurs within the street yard has to be a decorative fence more than just a cyclone type fence. You had proposed that on N, but I think there's also a projection into the street yard on Windsor, so we need the decorative fencing on that side as well.
And our client is, they are willing to do an entire aluminum fence for all the interior exterior fencings of the play spaces. So, yep, we'd be happy to comply there.
And there was a small extension of the parking lot that was projecting into that planting and landscape easement. I think we'd like to see you stay out of that. And we did have a few comments from the fire department, and I think,
He just left.
Joe, he just left, okay. I can read through them. The first one, the building's fire connection shall be located within 200 feet of a hydrant water supply. Connection shall be a 2.5-inch clapboard female Y connection. If Chief was here, he could explain what that means better than I could, I'm sure. The building shall have a Knox box to provide keys for access for an emergency. Number 3, the current hydrant location at the intersection of School Road and N and School Road and Windsor are not in a placement for optimum accessibility for this facility. They will require a hydrant on site. And the 4th one was just to confirm with the fire department that the driveway configuration will accommodate their equipment. And then I think Travis had some comments as well.
Yeah, like Aaron said, a lot of the comments were initially addressed, and some of them are just left down to some text edits. But some of the ones I could go over, like for any of them, there will be the land disturbance permit and stuff like that before construction. You guys are aware of that. To touch on the utility easement, I know we've talked a little bit on that, and I guess to kind of explain that with the utility easement, it's for any telephone, any gas and stuff like that that would be in there. I think there's telephone in there now, if I'm not mistaken. Cable TV.
Yep.
So that's kind of where the issue comes with that is it's not, we don't necessarily own it and can say that they can build over it, the utilities that are in the easement that have it. So it'd really be more of a getting approval from the utilities, maybe getting an agreement with them. Is kind of what I think I was trying to get at when we were talking on the phone. So that's kind of, I guess, trying to explain that is for the utility easement. It's kind of working with the existing utilities that are there and any other possible utilities, which if you would need contacts for utilities, I could help you out with that. The only other one that we mentioned kind of with, another one I wanted to go over was with the grading limits. I think some of the grading limits are shown outside the property line, so that would just be I think it's, it's an empty lot and also just be a temporary construction easement into those areas, and then a right-of-way when you guys are grading out into the right-of-way as well. And along with, I know we already talked a little bit about for the stormwater. The stormwater report was submitted just earlier this week, and we did provide comments for that. So we are working with the engineers there on stormwater as well for the site.
And do all members have a plan set to be looking at? Because I do have a couple extra copies. Okay, I just wanted to check and verify. Travis, just to ask a couple questions on moving forward. Like I said, the play area is critical for our client, and if they were to have to be outside of that easement area, that it could raise a huge red flag, I guess, for them. They're a little bit limited now on the amount of space that they have, and that's why they were acquiring 10 more feet of land to the south from Hamburg. Going forward, I guess, will we be working with the village, since that is a public piece of property? I mean, we really shouldn't be reaching out to private utility companies because they don't essentially have ownership of that. I mean, granted, sure, it might be MG&E that's probably going to be doing the utilities through there, but at this point, it's going to be a village decision, correct? On trying to work out an agreement for.
We would just need to see approval from the the utilities that are in there right now that they're okay. That you have an agreement with them. Kind of the agreement that you described, that if they would need to go through and remove anything, that they would not be responsible for replacing.
Are there any comments from the public or questions?
I guess I have a question. Going over the plans here, kind of, is there, with the engineer, is there looks for kind of traffic coming off of School and N as a stop point, or?
That's not something that specifically looked at that we were concerned with. Some that we could look into a little bit more, but I guess with the amount of traffic going there, and if they have the amount of spaces required to get in and out, then I wouldn't see that as being too big of an issue, but good. So you're saying when they come off of turning onto Windsor, or are you saying backing up onto N?
Getting back on the end and taking a left is difficult coming out from that gas station currently, so I was just thinking for those hot times.
Probably in the morning
Yeah.
Yeah.
and late afternoon. That's gonna be tough.
And then kind of the splash pad area, was that something that was going to be public or just for the
Just
buildings?
private, yeah.
Private, okay.
Yep, the play area is enclosed by a 5-foot tall fence, ornamental, sorry, not vinyl, aluminum fence. And then the interior play spaces, there's 3 different interior play spaces divided by age group, and those will be divided by a 4-foot tall aluminum fence. And the splash pad, again, will be divided in itself so that children don't have complete access of it all the time.
Okay, have they rented that out for birthday parties or anything in the past?
Not that I know of. I think it would just be specific to Rainbow. It's a, give a little bit more detail on it. It's a 22 foot by 22 foot concrete pad with a few different light sprinklers. I mean, we have a small 4-inch drain that's collecting the water, so it's not like there's high outputs right now.
Can I get clarification on that? In our packet, it says it's 16 by 16. Unless I'm
Yeah.
not looking at the right thing.
Yep. Look at the dimensions here. Concrete is 22 by 22
Okay.
to the fence.
Maybe the pad itself is,
Our site plan is proposed as 22 by 22 concrete, but where was the discrepancy, I guess, on the plans?
well, there's a top view and splash pad data, and it says that it's 16 by 16.
On the conceptual, the renderings?
It's a color printout from Miracle Midwest.
Yep. I think that was provided to us just as a concept, and they wanted to try and extend that 3 more feet just as a
Okay.
buffer zone, so
Right.
that you didn't have. They wanted to have 3 feet of space between fence and actual 16 by 16 play area, so that children aren't playing right up against the fence. So rather than doing a sod, 3 foot of sod that might die over time or be hard to maintain because you're putting a mower inside that fence, we'd be looking at a 22 foot by 22 foot pad.
Okay.
Was this being looked at as a new 4K site?
Not that I'm aware of, but I can verify.
Okay. Are they going to offer before or after school care?
Not that I'm aware of as well.
Are there going to be any busing going on? Not moving to any.
It doesn't seem possible
That
that you would tap busing.
it's simply a parent drop off daycare center.
What about the after-school kids coming, aren't you going through ages 12?
Correct.
What about the kids when they go to school at 2:30? How do they get there?
That is something I guess I can follow up on for the plan commission. Apologize, I don't have that information.
Is there space for the buses to stop there and turn around?
Not on site. To my knowledge, and no, I completely understand the concern there. To my knowledge, and working with Rainbow, is that I guess they've never just brought up the fact that they have bus drop-offs. We've worked with 2 other sites with them, and no talk of we need a specific area for bus drop-off here or here. So I would anticipate that their age group is probably between that adolescent age. Toddlers and adolescents is what they're targeting, where they might not get as many 12-year-olds or 11-year-olds.
Happy to take comments if you'd get your name and address just for our minutes.
They're registered, but yeah.
Perfect.
So, I think I'm done with questions if you guys have any.
HVAC is going in that back cutout on the roof, is that what that is?
On the roof. Are you looking at the the transformer pad?
No, I'm looking, proposed rear elevation.
Oh, yes, sorry, the HBO. Here, yes, correct.
So everything's going there?
Yes, besides the transformer pad utility. They have approximately 4 that would be up on top.
Okay. So that, are they having furnaces inside there?
To my knowledge, yes.
Because those will have to be vented, plus you're gonna have outside air intakes somewhere, somehow.
Okay.
Okay. There's a few people that'd like to speak on this topic. Thank you for,
Yep.
if you want to go way back here. So I have Jennifer Thomas. Would you like to come?
Kind of speak together.
Yeah, you guys can come up together.
Over here?
Yep, to the table here. And then Jason, Amy, Linda. All coming up.
I'm Jennifer Thomas. I'm representing Kids Safari Learning Center tonight. Leanne Doherty, our administrator, is regrettably ill and could not make it tonight. Our concerns are currently we have 2 5-star quality centers in the village, along with 2 other group centers, and none are at capacity currently. Adding a center with 115 children is going to put one of our 4 family-owned businesses out of business. It's already hard, and a good portion of our families aren't even necessarily from the village. So I'll let these guys talk and make comments as you go. Y'all have things to bring.
My name is Jason Kuderna. I'm here on behalf of Learning Ladder. I'm the office manager over there. As Jennifer said, we do have 4 group centers. We also have 4 licensed in-home providers in Cottage Grove and numerous unlicensed in-home providers as well. As far as the licensed providers, Cottage Grove already has 497 available child care spots for a community of 6,000 people. Compare that to McFarland, which has 8,000 residents. They have 502 licensed child care spots available. A couple other local communities. Oregon, 9,000 residents, have just shy of 800 child care spots. Meanwhile, Deerfield has 122 spots for 2,300 residents. Marshall, almost 4,000 residents, only have 120 child care spots. Basically what I'm saying is the market in Cottage Grove for child care is oversaturated. We have a higher ratio of available child care positions to residents than anywhere else in our area.
And we've also not included Little Explorers, which is also a competition of ours as well.
And that's another 200 spots. Little Explorers over on Reiner Road, they have a lot of, take a lot of Cottage Grove students there as well. And again, Cottage Grove, we do have 2 5-star locations. To compare that to Sun Prairie, they also have 2. Much larger population, and their 2 providers can only, they're both smaller. They can only have capacity of 40 kids. In Sun Prairie, have access to a 5-star program. Whereas between Learning Ladder and Kids Safari, we have about 380 spots between the 2 of us combined. So.
And we have never been at 100%, ever. Our children age out every year. There's children aging out. you know, it's tough. In order to run a high-quality program, we need to keep it full. We can't run at 50%. It just, you can't keep the quality. All of our staff, early childhood has changed so much. It's not babysitting like it used to be. Our staff have bachelor's degrees and associate degrees.
Master's degrees.
Master's degrees, yes, we have master's degrees as well.
Yeah.
We have to, our payroll to tuition is really, really high. It's higher than any other service industry out there. So if someone thinks bringing another place to town will help lower prices, it won't. It'll just put somebody out of business because we can't lower the quality, or we can't run anything any cheaper than we are because we have so many regulations that we have to abide by, and the payroll itself is incredible. And I would like to say, since you are also working with teacher training and stuff, I think she can attest to it's so difficult to even find teachers that have the specialized training in the area. We run ads all the time and we don't even get any applicants. So I'm not really sure where they're going to get their 13 full-time teachers from that they're saying that they're going to get, because we can't even get one person to answer our ads. We both have staff that have been with us for a long, long time, which is really how we keep them. They've been a part of the community for so long that that's why they're there. We treat them really well to keep them there. And we do that because it's a small town and we like that feel. And we hope you'll reconsider bringing in a chain to our community that we think really would do better, keeping it local
And family-owned businesses.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I would urge and demand more clarification on is if they are going to accept, because from what I've read about Rainbow Child Care, they do accept students from 6 weeks old to 12 years old. That would include kindergarten through 4th graders, and how are those students going to the center? There would have to be busing because the children cannot walk from school to the center. And there would have to be a licensed safe zone approved by the state for that, for drop-off. To go along, I just want to reiterate, Wisconsin has the 5-star quality rating system. Both Learning Ladder and Kidsafari went through a national accreditation process. So if you're worried about the quality, it would match the quality of Rainbow Child Care coming in. And we would also both have to follow food guidelines above and beyond state requirements to offer nutritional meals to children and a diversity of foods.
I think the only other thing I want to point out is, in our opinion, our knowledge of the childcare situation in Cottage Grove, bringing a center this size is going to close down at least one center. It's probably going to be one of the smaller ones, either Cozy Kids or Creative Kids. One of those two will likely go out of business, just because there's not 115 kids in Cottage Grove that need care right now. So they're going to take from all 4 of us, plus the in-homes, and somebody's going to go out of business. That's just kind of the reality of it.
It will happen. Somebody will within the next couple of years.
So. Questions?
Yeah, where did these facts come from?
I looked these up on the internet this morning. The child care license, I got that off the Youngstar website. I clicked in, you go in, you can type an area code, it brings up all of the Youngstar licensed programs in town. So that's where the licensed child care numbers are. I just added them up for each town. And then the Google search of the populations, I think it was 2010 census for all those.
So do you know if the Cottage Grove, was that based off town or village numbers or both?
I don't know.
Okay. Neither one of you have ever had a waiting list?
Let's explain waiting lists.
I do have a waiting list right now because I have lots of families who want to enroll in June when school lets out. We constantly have an infant wait list. Your wife gets pregnant, you're 3 months along, okay, I need to start looking for childcare. So I have a wait list for families that want to start in June, July, August, sometimes up to 12 months out, families are coming in and looking for childcare. So yes, it's a wait list, but in my experience, especially for infants, when it's that far out, half of the people on my wait list will never show up, because between now and 6 months from now, things change. They're often on multiple wait lists, because I can't guarantee I'm going to have a spot on September 4th of next year.
Our wait lists are probably got to have a lot of the same people on it.
I was going to say, I think to go into wait lists too, we have to explain the state ratio that we have to follow for licensing requirements. For children from 0 to 2, you can only have 4 children to 1 teacher, which is plenty. If you've ever been in a room with 4 babies, it's a lot, it's a handful. So typically those classrooms there's more need for that age group, but it is also a money loss with what you're paying your staff members, qualified bachelor degree teachers, to be in those classrooms. And you have 4 students paying their wage plus the mortgage plus everything else. And then into the preschool rooms, you have a higher student to staff ratio. And those are currently the classrooms where we are not at capacity. We are doing fine right now, but we are not at capacity in our 2, 3, and 4-year-old classrooms currently.
And those are the classrooms that carry the whole building financially.
Along with after school and summer programming, because for school age, you can have 1 teacher up to 18 children. So obviously you're bringing, although the rate for those children are lower, you're bringing in more income for the older ages to help support the loss in the infant rooms that you're wanting to provide.
I guess I was going back to the capacity, so there's a waiting list, but the likelihood to getting to 100% capacity, or it hasn't happened?
No, people might call and we might not have an opening, but there's openings in the building. But you have to be, because of our regulations, you have to have the exact age in each classroom. It's pegged all over how to fill in those last few spots anyways. So they might call, we might say we don't have a spot, but we probably can get them in 3 months, 6 months, something like that. So it sounds like we're on a waiting list that is not available, but it's very short term.
Have you spoken to the village board about this, or your elected officials?
About?
Your opposition to another daycare?
No.
I think, to be candid, there's probably some significant difficulty in the village, essentially. I don't know if I want to call it restraint of trade. Maybe you can help out with that one. But I mean, it's if an otherwise qualified applicant comes in, I don't know without looking further. But I mean, I think that you have to. I think you have to be realistic that the board, if they say, well, you meet all the requirements, it's a part of doing business. And I don't know if I don't know where the planning commission how the planning commission would feel about it, or the board would feel about it, but there may be some limitations on their ability to really do what you're asking them to do, which is not let a competitor come in.
We understand that, and we're here for the long haul, and we'll keep doing what we're doing in spite of that. But we are talking about children, and we're talking about care of children, and I think that's different than a restaurant or any other type of business. I mean, this is really important stuff. These are our kids in our community.
There are other communities nearby that have a higher need for childcare than we do, especially if it's a high-quality childcare. Your Deerfields and Cambridge, Marshall, they need something like this. Cottage Grove has 2 centers already. I don't think Cottage Grove is the right place for Rainbow.
Based on the population, it looks like a beautiful place, and everything he said about it is fabulous, and we're very familiar with the things that he's talking about, but it's just not big enough to support all of us. So eventually there'll be an empty building, whether it's their building or one of our buildings. There will be an empty building. The population is just not growing fast enough for this. we'll fight hard to keep what we have.
Yes. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you for coming up and speaking. Was there anybody else that wanted to speak on this topic? Okay, I guess
We
we'll,
can close the public hearing and then move on.
yep, so we'll close the public hearing here, and move to line item 8. Discuss and consider request for approval of a certified survey map for Rainbow Child Care to shift the southern lot line of parcel 0711043000502 10 feet to the south.
Yeah, pretty straightforward request. They just need a little bit more room on the parcel than what they have, so they're looking to adjust that lot line.
So at which one of these, Aaron, would we deal with, or would they deal with the utility easements?
Say under the site plan.
Okay.
So that's on lot 10?
Correct.
Okay. Is there any more discussion, or do we have a motion?
I'll move approval of certified survey map from Rainbow Child Care to shift to the southern lot line of parcel 0711043005002 10 feet to the south.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. I have a motion and a second, do I have any other discussion? Okay, I'm gonna do a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Extensions? Motion passes. All right, moving to 9, discuss and consider request for approval of a conditional use permit application for Rainbow Child Care Center for a group daycare center, 9+ students, land use on parcel 0711043000502.
This one, not about the site plan issues, but just about whether to grant this use, which is not permitted by right. It requires the conditional use permit.
At some point, we do need a clarification on the busing or whatever, because it sounds like it is inevitable that there will be some sort of busing, or and how that flows with the layout and everything. So I don't know if that's appropriate on this one, or if it's, it's more of the site plan.
Yeah, I think that more falls into the site plan. All right, any more discussion or a motion?
What did staff's recommending we approve this?
Yes.
I move approval. As stated. I don't want to read it again.
I'll second.
Yeah, a motion and a second. Any more discussion? I guess just to clarify, obviously, this is just to get the conditional use permit to have the opportunity for this type on this property, so. Okay. Go to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Extensions, I'm going to extend myself from that one. Motion passes. Moving on. Number 10, discuss and consider request for approval of site plan application for Rainbow Child Care Center to build an approximately 11,000 square foot daycare center on parcel 071104300502.
We'll be recommending approval with the conditions, the planning conditions, and the fire department conditions, and the planning staff report, and with MSA's conditions and their report. Chief is back in the room. I kind of went through your conditions while you were out. I don't know if you want to add anything.
I'm sorry I had to step out. We had an alarm to go to and we called it off to the queue over there. The concern I have about the facility from the fire department perspective is going to be that because of the size that they're going to make it, we're not going to be, by IBC code, and they're absolutely right, they're keeping it under 12,000 square feet, so the building will not be sprinklered. It will not have a fire department connection on it. It will not be alarmed because the code does not require that. The things that okay, if I can't deal with those particular items to protect the facility, what really needs to be addressed is the locations of the existing hydrants. The hydrants are located at the intersection of N and School Road, which will block, if we have to hook, it will block that whole road there. There's another hydrant on Windsor and School Road that will also block School Road. There needs to be a different placement of a hydrant.
The condition in the report, we had asked for one on site.
Yes, and the other thing that we really need to look at is, and the plans don't give me any dimensions or sizes, but accessibility for fire apparatus. They have, I guess I would call them islands that coming out and stuff like that, and I don't know if that's going to be, you have the sizes that we have and stuff, and so I don't know.
If we give you the model number of the truck, do you have the software to?
Yep, we have the capability to do an auto turn analysis,
Okay.
and make those turns work. We are trying to stick to that 36 parking stalls on site. That left-hand turn as you come into the site, I can see would probably be a concern for you, and it might result in us losing a parking stall there. That is why our site plan was pushing 2 more stalls into that landscape buffer easement. That 10-foot buffer does not continue to the site to the north. That is why, again, we were asking the planning commission that be looked at further and looked at by staff further to see if those 2 stalls can be approved in the case that we have to lose a stall or 2 for to accommodate fire.
I assume also that you're going to have fencing all the way around to keep the munchkins in?
Yes, and we can provide access gates where needed, if needed by you.
Okay.
And we're more than happy to comply with moving any type of hydrants where you need them.
Awesome. About the best we can do.
Andrew, do you have any recollection about that landscape buffer easement?
I do.
Where it came from?
It goes back to 1995, and it was imposed by Don Kelcher, who was the resident engineer on behalf of MSA in the village at that point in time. It was kind of an odd little situation. It was a 33-foot utility easement. It was a request to expand the right-of-way width on Highway N by 10 feet. So we dedicated an additional 10 feet of our land to the western edge of the right-of-way, which then reduced that utility easement to 23 feet. And Don kind of felt somewhat arbitrarily that it would be good to stick a 10-foot landscape buffer along the western edge of that remnant 23-foot utility easement. My recollection is at the time that that was approved, there was discussion that as things developed on that commercial frontage, and this is 20 years ago, So it's been a little time waiting for this to happen. There could be some latitude and flexibility granted depending upon the terms and conditions of the proposal. And I think one thing that's relevant here is that this site has 42% green space. So we're not dancing on the edge of the 25% requirement. There's a significant amount of green space on the property. I think if it can accommodate the needs of the fire department to move a couple stalls, in one little piece of it so that they can get clearances for their equipment, I think would be logical.
If nothing else, if they can make, instead of having curbs where they're bringing out those, whatever you want to call them, the islands or whatever, if they were tapered so you could drive over them, not have to drive over a curb.
Well, I
type
think our
situation.
intention is to more multiple.
Okay.
Right. In our resubmittal back to the village, we propose them as multiple, as well as looked at our landscaping to, as you and I discussed over the phone, if you needed to drive over a shrub or two, it can be done. But we'll look at that turn radius.
Shrubs, yes. Trees, no.
No. We'll look at the turn radius.
Andrew, what was the, setting aside the arbitrary nature of it, what was the approval that was involved with? Because we can go back and try to check the minutes and see what.
It would have been plat approval of the first edition of North Lawn Estates,
Okay.
or that 41-acre parcel. And that was platted during 1995 and recorded in 1996.
Okay.
So it would have been in the staff report from MSA.
That's all I have.
Given that, I think I would be okay with changing planning condition number 2 to say if they do lose a spot due to the fire equipment access, they could protrude into that landscape easement to add the spot or two back.
Okay.
How about buses? How are we going to get buses in and out of there?
See, that's the problem you're gonna have, you're not gonna be able to turn buses around in there with the, unless we're gonna do little short buses and stuff like that, you know, just like we're not gonna be able to turn fire apparatus around unless the stalls are empty, you know what I mean, so, and there's no accessibility to make it any bigger than that with what they're plotting and planning in there.
That's a question mark we need to answer.
Yeah, I guess that's a pretty.
I want to see how buses are handled and how
Yeah.
the fire
Well, if
equipment's
there even
handled.
is buses, we don't know
Well,
that answer.
but
so,
that,
It would seem to me there is going to be.
yeah, we don't know. So, I guess.
to me, it looks pretty tight regardless.
In terms of fire access.
Could we just ask if you're going to speak, just come up, because we create a record out of all this, and we just need to know who's speaking, and it's hard to tell sometimes listening to the tape.
In terms of fire access, entering and exiting the site, I'm assuming with the village of Cottage Grove, there is a minimum backup distance that you can work with. That's what we see in other municipalities. If they have the opportunity to back up, say 200 feet, back the way they came, that's how a lot of municipalities would operate. And maybe the chief can elaborate on that, of how he would be looking to enter and exit this site. A lot of sites come to a dead-end parking lot where there is no, I mean, a 66-foot semi-truck needs 120 feet, a 120-foot turn radius bulb to do a full turn. So you can imagine what a fire truck would need to exit in and out of a site like this. Chief, could you elaborate maybe on your backup distances that you would need?
See, the issue is gonna be, I'm looking at the plan that I've got here and the draft plan. And the issue you're gonna have is, yes, you can pull straight in and go to the left and go on the north side of it, but it's gonna be getting back out depending on the time of day and whether or not you're gonna have vehicles in these parking spots that they've got. So unless you can back all the way out just like you drove straight in, and these are large fire pieces of apparatus, that's going to be a challenge. There's just no question about it. It's going to be a challenge. And it also depends on where they're going to put the hydrant, so that's the first hydrant that you're going to have to hit or to hook up to. And without knowing that information, I can't give you a good answer. I really, truly can't. Is it doable? Yeah, it is, but it also depends what part in there around it, and where the snow went to, and how many snowbanks you're going to have to go around.
Sure. Yep.
So I really can't give you a solid answer on that tonight. Make sense?
Yep. Yeah. Thank you. I think we can work to work through that fire apparatus exhibit and verify that these minimum turn radiuses are going to work. Potentially, like Aaron said, keep the 2 stalls that are in the 10-foot landscape buffer area, and then remove 2 stalls to maybe look at widening that drive, that entrance drive if needed, and then also removing a stall if needed, so that he can make his minimum turns, backing in and out, or coming in and backing out. And looking at, if you look at the site, we are completely maxed out in terms of their building, what we had to work with their architecture, of what they need the size of the building to be, and we are maxed out on every setback, meeting all the pavement setbacks and building setbacks, but we're more than willing to work with that site plan and adjust things accordingly.
We still have to address the whole busing.
That is correct.
That's going to be a big.
I would assume that, and I apologize that I don't quite understand the pro forma there. I would assume that there would be bus drop off on Windsor or School potentially, rather than navigating the site. You'd have a similar constraint of with a fire truck as you would with a bus. So, to my knowledge, I don't think our client would expect a bus to be pulling into this site when they lay these out. Like I said, they've done 100, 120, I think is their number right now. So if they had bus drop-offs, what may be occurring here is that a bus will pull into the site directly facing the building, let children off, and then they'll be able to navigate that sidewalk to the main entrance rather than pulling directly in front of the main entrance door, obviously with the assistance of the employees.
I think there's rules on bus drop-off and locations. That's kind of the concern.
Okay.
And so we have to look into that if it's going to occur or not.
Okay.
So
I'd like to get some answers on that before I'd be.
then also kind of going back to the looking into the traffic entering in the County Road N.
Mm-hmm.
So. And when's our next planning meeting? The 9th?
Next week.
Right?
Correct.
Okay.
I think that the utility should be spoken
Right.
to as well regarding infringement on the easement.
Because that may be a deal breaker.
I apologize. You said utilities located or talk to. Like
Well, we need to make sure they're okay with it
Sure.
according to.
Yep.
Yeah.
I personally don't like the idea of playground based on Highway N, but that's just me.
Point of order. Would there be enough time for you to address these issues and get them back for the next planning meeting?
Yes. If we're still, you said the 9th is what the next meeting is?
Well, yeah, we typically put our
We did
meeting
it
packets
tomorrow.
together tomorrow.
Okay.
Otherwise, the next meeting would be April, second Wednesday in April.
End of the day tomorrow? We can,
It's usually noon we put them together.
okay. We can do our best, and we'll keep you posted, because we would like to stay on the next meeting's agenda to work through these items.
Okay, so I guess with that, I'm going to motion to table this, to look into the bus situation, the utilities, see if they're willing to listen to that, and the,
What was it? There was fire.
Fire
Yeah,
apparatus.
fire
Access and turn.
Yep.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion to table with a second. Any more discussion?
With the understanding that if it's possible to put it on for your next meeting, you would, otherwise it's going to be in April.
Yep. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Extensions? Motion passes.
I guess you folks, I would talk to like the village board, you know, the board members or whatever. But it's kind of like Lee and Fred said, you know, we're here to review site plans and buildings and not necessarily dictate, just like pizza places. We can't tell how many pizza places can be in Cottage Grove, you know?
Thank you. Yeah. All right, moving on. Number 11, discuss and consider request for approval of a site plan amendment application for Clausen Quality Coatings to build an approximately 23,000 square foot vehicle storage facility at their existing facility located at 200 Corporate Court.
Those of you who were here on the commission in the middle of last year, Clausen came and got approval to expand the vehicle circulation area, the paved area on the site. At that time, they did say it was a possibility that at some point in the future, they would be looking to add a second building such as they are now, and they are back. Scott Rolchin is here from Excel Engineering representing the applicant. He can walk us through the site plan a little bit, and if you have any questions, you're free to ask.
Hello. As Aaron said, we had.
Yes.
Yeah, you said. I'm like, darn. I know there's another one over there, but I'll just put this up here for now. Oh, that's gonna be handy. So as Aaron said, there was a. Thank you. Yeah. Appreciate it. There was this plan was previously approved last year, not this particular plan, but a plan that was similar that was just for parking for trucks. That many of you probably remember from last year. Now Clausen would like to actually put a building on this site to house the trucks. So they have the ability to house 16 full-size semis and tanker trucks. So the layout is essentially the same as far as site goes. The building is 22,000 square feet, and the layout's pretty much the same as it was before. We have a parking lot in front, a couple catch basins that will route water to the stormwater management facility that is over here. It's regional, and the site was marginal at best for infiltration, but because there was infiltration previously provided for the other building that Clausen has on site, we decided to just show the infiltration area and prove that it would work. The front parking lot is exempt from infiltration because it's a trucking area, but all the roof water and all the green space areas will be routed to the infiltration basin, which will then be routed to the regional stormwater management facility. There is also a substantial buffer along the north side of the property that we are staying out of. There will be no grading or anything in that buffer. Actually, the buffer extends up to the building here. But we are also staying away from the existing tree area that's on the north side of the parcel as much as possible to reduce the amount of grading on there. And as far as parking on the facility, the existing facility has 4 stalls. We are also proposing 4 stalls at this facility here with 1 handicap spot. The parking for employees will actually happen inside the building. When a truck moves out, the employee will park in that spot until he returns. So there isn't really a need for too much parking on the site itself, for car parking anyways. The exterior, I don't have a color rendering, but I did show, I was passing around pictures of what the existing facility here looks like. It will be using the same colors and exterior materials for the building. We did address, MSA had some comments, engineering comments that we addressed all of them. I do have one question on one of them that I'd like to bring up, but I don't know if anybody has any other questions at this point.
As far as the planning staff report, we had a couple of minor comments the first go around. Since the meeting got postponed, they've had a chance to address those, so we'd recommend approval without conditions other than the ones that MSA still had that were applicable.
Like you said, I think all of them were addressed. There's a couple other minor note ones, I think, in our last review. The only other one in the stormwater is all taken care of now. You were working, I think it was you were working with Eric on that in our office.
Mm-hmm.
I think the last conversation I saw, the stormwater has been addressed. The only other one is the water service, which I'm guessing, I don't know if that's what you were gonna
Yes, that's
touch on, and if they're proposing to tap into the main and add a new water service, and there is already a stub. There is an existing stub out there, which I don't know if is it a different size. It's a smaller stub.
It's like I'm guessing a 2-inch.
Yeah. So our comment was, it's not typical that we'd want to leave an existing service that's never going to get used under pavement and not shut it off. Just it's another maintenance thing that could possibly go wrong, and it's also stagnant water sitting in a service. So that was our only other comment, would be to dig back to the main and shut off the corporation stop. You don't have to dig and remove the whole copper service, but once it's shut off at the main with the corporation stop and it's shut off and removed, you would have another pavement patch there as well. But once that's removed, then the curb box can just be pulled out, so it's not another thing in your pavement sticking up. So
Right, and that was our I don't know if it's really concerned, but I guess we've never done that in other community. I mean, typically for something like that, if the lateral wants to be abandoned, you take off the curb box which is located here, take that off, and the curb stop there valve would be shut off. But I guess what Travis is saying is they would like us to actually dig in the middle of the cul-de-sac down to the main and shut off the corporation valve at the lateral, which is going to, obviously we have to dig out the middle of the cul-de-sac that's already, I'm assuming, good pavement, and taking the risk of possibly hitting the corporation's stop or just disrupting the main that's already good. You got good gravel base in there and everything else already. Seems like a lot of work just to shut the lateral off at the main instead of at the right of way, which, yes, Travis is right, there could possibly be stagnant water in the lateral, but I think that's pretty typical. Most places have laterals all over the place that are not being used. This wouldn't be that unusual that there would be a lateral that wasn't used. You know, it's been that way since it's been installed already. So I guess that was only just to go through the extra expense of ripping up the middle of the cul-de-sac just to turn off the corporation stop. Just seemed like a lot of work and expense on the owner. That was the only comment I had. As far as everything else, we've been working with MSA to address all the other issues to make sure we're good.
I don't know. I don't have a whole lot more else to add than what we stated. Talking with Mike, our engineer, that was his comments on it, and that's why we made the comments. So that's why we had it in there.
Is there any alternatives?
Not that I know off the top of my head. I mean, I guess I've usually seen it if we're abandoning it. If you're going to be, paving over the end of it, that, it's abandoned all the way back to the main. It would have to be something too that, if they would like to fight it, I'd have to bring it up to the Mike, the engineer, who I'm filling in for tonight, to see what his comments would be on it as well, and have that decision made by him. So.
Travis, revealing my lack of engineering knowledge, what is a corporation stop?
I guess it's like a valve that's where the service is connected into the main, where the water can be turned off at the main. So once you turn that, it's like turning off the faucet. It seals that off.
Yeah, there's actually two valves, more or less. There's one when they install the lateral, the corporation stop is in there, and they use that to turn off to make sure that there's no water going in the lateral when they install it. Then there's another valve at the end. So typically, both valves are, well, the corporation stop is on, but the end valve is still closed. So we're just proposing to leave the condition as it is right now, instead of going all the way to the main, because there's no way of turning off that valve unless you actually dig all the way down to the main.
What's the likelihood that something could occur that would require that to happen?
Gosh, I don't know what the off the top of my head would be on that. I guess it's just another. I don't know. I don't know off the top of my head of what it could happen, but things that could happen would be, I guess, if the service would freeze, but hopefully that would be deep enough. But I mean, that's just an example of a maintenance thing.
Who pays for the maintenance in the future?
Maintenance, if it's anything within the right of way there, it would be the village that would have to go down and fix that.
Is that an issue that could be addressed in a maintenance agreement where the owner of that property would be responsible for maintaining and any sort of damage that may occur?
That's an alternative that if you guys understand that, and I mean, we would draft it in such a way that if you understand that if there's a problem, you're going to need to take care of. What kind of cost are you talking about? Let's say you did it right now.
Dan and I were discussing it. Dan Moss from Moss Brothers, or Dan Shea from Moss Brothers. Sorry. We were thinking anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 to do that work.
But in answer to your question, yes, we could and have.
Can I just make one comment on that? Because
yeah, step up to the table here and state your name, please.
Dan Shea with Moss Brothers Construction. The only issue I see with this is we can go down and take and close that valve. Just the process of closing that valve could create the potential, because those valves are generally not, once they're put in and open, they're left open. So we could go down there and potentially close that valve, and that valve could leak. It's a distinct possibility. Or we can close it and take that, cap it off, and 5 or 10 years from now you could have a leak there. Put in the condition that it's in. So normally, and I agree with Scott, normally we don't see those removed.
I'm not opposed to having my and then or an agreement in lieu of.
Yeah, and we can talk with you guys on it. I can talk with Mike and we can work directly on that comment as well.
That'd be great.
It seems like a lot of mess around in cost if you can set up an agreement that,
We deal with it.
yeah, and leave it alone. Yeah.
We'll try to make sure the agreement doesn't cost $3,000.
Yeah, it's just,
each one is very different, so.
Yeah.
I was thinking that.
Every time you open up the road, it's, it's a patch in the road, is what it ends up being. And they don't function as well as the road is, as it's paved now.
Just extra comments on the building will be fire protected, and we've been in contact with the chief. We're adding one new hydrant at the southeastern corner of the building. I got my directions right here. And there is an existing hydrant at the end of the cul-de-sac right now.
How old is that cul-de-sac over there, do you know?
20 years.
Mm-hmm. Well, we know when it was bought, we know it was built, so.
More discussion?
Just a question for staff. When I was looking at the storm management facility maintenance agreement, I just want to confirm that the developer actually is Corporate Court Investments LLC. It wasn't clear to me actually who was the developer, looking at the signature line versus the designated developer. And when I looked at the Wisconsin Department of Financial Institutions, the only corporate court that came up that would be similar was Corporate Court Investments LLC. So I'm assuming that is the owner and the developer.
I believe that's right, Randy. That hasn't changed, has it?
No, yeah. The corporate, Randy Stoddard, plus Quality Coatings. Corporate Court Investment is an LLC as part of, plus Quality Coatings is a family-owned business. So one owner and his sons and the LLC is part of the structure of the kids under Clausen Quality Coatings. So I don't know the legal in regards to how it's filed, if it's corporate court or if it's Clausen, but it's one and the same.
I think that that goes to Mick's point, is that if we do agreements, we always ask for some kind of proof of, okay, who are we making the agreement with? So that would be something we'd follow up on.
Sure.
Thank you.
I don't know, an Access Dane, looks like it's under Corporate Court Investments LLC. Okay, any more discussion?
Motion. I'll make a motion to recommend approval for the site plan amendment application for Clausen Quality Coatings to build an approximate 23,000 square foot vehicle storage facility at their existing facility located at 200 Corporate Court, including the comments from village planner and the village engineer, with caveat on the just reopening the discussion on the hydrant or the water lateral.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Just to be clear, on your motion, you're just wanting them to come up with an agreement on.
Yeah, either an agreement, a maintenance agreement, or an alternative to requiring them to dig that out. So I'll let staff deal with that, I guess.
Okay, so looking into alternative methods to make that happen. Okay, just to be clear. Excellent. Any more discussion?
Don, just to, so that they don't have to come back, then do you have a problem with having staff resolve that or deal with that issue? And
I do not.
Okay. So Travis, you and Mike can be working with them.
Yep.
Is his motion clear, or does it need to be amended to state the staff comment?
I thought it did, but yeah. I mean, I think that as long as the direction is to get it taken care of through staff, I mean, I think that's inherent in the motion. So
That was the intent.
Okay.
I want to make sure I understand the motion. The way I understand it, one, they could just do what's in, what we already have before us in the application, which would be just to go ahead and do what the village is asking you to do. Or, as an alternative, entering into this agreement, which would be a maintenance agreement to maintain that lateral and to be responsible for any sort of repair work or damages that would have to be addressed if there's an issue with that lateral, even though it's in the public right of way. Is that?
And I guess I understood the motion to contain a third alternative, which is if something other than these two can be worked out between the parties, that would be acceptable as well.
That is correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep. Okay, any further discussion? Okay. We'll go to vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Extensions? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Number 12, discuss and consider approval of a resolution 2016-02, a resolution finding that a proposed Hamburg-Jensen urban service area expansion and consistent with the Village of Cottage Grove comprehensive plan.
We have a staff report, a draft of a resolution, and fairly lengthy set of application materials here in your packet. So basically, we've petitioned CARPC for an urban service area expansion. Part of the application process, we need to provide them with a resolution from our plan commission stating that what we're proposing is consistent with the comprehensive plan. So you have the resolution here in front of you. It references a couple of exhibits. Exhibit A would actually be map 2.1 from the application materials showing where the addition area is, as well as some areas that we're looking to take out of the urban service area. Then Exhibit B would be map 3.2 in the application materials showing the proposed land use. Basically, the eastern, approximately half of the urban service area that we're requesting to add is currently designated single-family residential in our comp plan. So that's the land use that's projected there, along with some stormwater management and parks. The western half, approximately, is designated as planned neighborhood, which can include at least 65% of the units as single-family, and would allow some additional duplex or multifamily units and also some small business type uses. Based on some feedback we got on a preliminary basis from CARPC, we're showing the proposed mix of land uses that are in the current application materials, which shows one small multifamily area, a few small duplex areas, and a slightly higher density single family mixed in with the lower density. So I guess in the opinion of staff, what we're proposing here would be consistent with what we're showing on the comprehensive plan. We sent you the revised application. I don't know if you've got that yet. And Andrew and Ellery are here as well. I don't know if you have any comments or...
Good evening. I'll be brief. I guess this is our desire and interest in continuing our relationship with the village that began 25 years ago.
Can you state your name?
I'm sorry, Andrew Homburg, representing Homburg Equipment. And we are one of the two petitioners this evening, along with Mr. Johnson, who's here as well. And this is our request to the village and to CARPC and to the township to support our endeavor to continue growing this community in a measured and appropriate fashion. We've invested a lot of time and money and energy from all sides, I guess, in my opinion, to do just that up in the West Lawn Estates neighborhood, north of Taylor Prairie. Years ago, when we were developing the plans for that parcel, there was a neighborhood plan that was designated as the Northwest Neighborhood. This request is consistent with those early concept drawings and plans that were also consistent with the master land use plan for the village. And so as we come out of the Great Recession and begin to build momentum again and grow this community, we're looking to the future, and we believe that this is an appropriate place to continue what we've began. And we're hoping for support in that endeavor.
I guess I should point out as well, the land use plan we're showing, CARPC wants to see that basically to establish what the land uses are, what the densities are, so they can kind of predict what the water and sewer usage are going to be, what, how the stormwater is going to flow in and out of the site. I think they understand as well as we do, street locations could change, some of these things could change. We're not necessarily improving this precise plan. We're saying something like this would be similar to, or would be consistent with that comprehensive. There will be plenty of opportunities as they go through the planning and rezoning process to get into the details of the layout.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other discussion or motion?
I have a couple of questions before we have a motion.
Okay, go ahead.
How many acres of land are we taking out of Cottage Grove for residential use with this application?
If you add in 220, we'd be taking out 217.
The other issue, 40 acres of this land. In the report, it stated that 40 acres of the land would probably not have any development occurring for over 10 years. And I was wondering, has there been any feedback from CARPC on that? I mean, that's a long time for bringing something to CARPC and having 40 acres be more than 10 years out for development. Have we gotten any feedback from CARPC as to staff's position on that?
It's not something that came up when they gave us their initial feedback.
Okay. And my third question would be, by bringing in the residential land that we are here, that could be developed, how does that affect the overall makeup or the overall plan that we have for commercial within the village of Cottage Grove? Are we in a position where we need more commercial land for development if we're bringing this much in over the next 10 years for residential use?
Yes, I think we would. The area north of the freeway would be the area we're looking at doing that. That would be another application we would have to make. I don't think this one would necessarily affect that, since we're proposing to add residential and take it out. It's more or less neutral. Chris could probably speak to this better than I can, but I think they do treat commercial a little bit different than residential in some of these.
Not really. We treat them equally. It's just the land area and the storm water.
Chris has registered to talk on this topic, so we can bring him up to the table and have discussion. So, you want to step up here?
Hi, Chris Ham. I did register against, you didn't have one for either or, not either for or against, but it is a rather large area for residential development, and really need to consider the impact on the schools. They have a referendum this spring yet as to what that's going to impact schools with. And I read at the trustees that are running for election, they're trying to figure out what Cottage Grove is and how it should be developed, and I don't know that that's been answered yet. So maybe premature for asking for that, but I guess what I gathered from what I read at least is that right now we're just a bedroom community, and that's not what we want to be. So how do we define what we want to be, and how are you guys going to get us there? So thank you.
Do you have any more discussion? I guess just following up what was just said, there's a big need for all types of development in Cottage Grove. More rooftops adds more commercial, and the chamber completed a study that kind of went into that at great length, that we're kind of lacking development in general, and it's needed. I think there's 26 houses for sale in Cottage Grove right now, and 13 of them have accepted offers. So there's 13 houses for sale. There's very limited lots available. So there's a need on both sides. So.
Just to build on that, and maybe to address Mick's question a little bit too, there is still vacant land on Cottage Grove Road that's zoned for commercial use that would be within the neighborhood of what we're proposing to add here. So as Kyle was indicating, the extra rooftops just to the north of there should help feed the development of the commercial along EB as well.
All right, with that, I'm going to motion to approve Resolution 2016-02 to expand the urban service area expansion agreement.
I'll just put the caveat in there. We'll have to double check the number. I'm not sure if there's been another resolution since this was drafted, but we'll put the correct sequence.
I'm drafting one that's 01, so this must be.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Extensions? All right, motion passes. Number 13, discuss and consider request from Town of Cottage Grove to approve Resolution 2016-03, approval of a waiver of extraterritorial plat approval jurisdiction for subdivision area in the Town of Cottage Grove.
Back again, Chris Hampton. I think we provided you a plat of where this approximately 11.5 acre piece of property is. It's at the southern border of your ETJ. It's currently a single family home with a barn on the property. Part of the property is farmable. It backs up on the south side to our Rolling Wheels subdivision, and to the west to Sky High subdivision. We have Bass Road that currently comes in and dead ends in Sky High, and we would continue that road down in this 11.5 acre parcel for approximately 16 or 17 homes that could be built on that piece of property.
Would they be deed restricted for no kids?
I don't think we can do that.
Nice trick.
No horses, though.
No, says like
I guess I'll point out the resolution before you today is specific to that area. I know there is interest in, Bill Larson is here. We're probably going to get a similar request to this one in the not too distant future for another potential subdivision. I think I'll pass this map around to show where the location of the other one is. It's the one marked Keller property, just southwest of the village. I guess from our point of view, there's a couple of issues here. I guess this is going to be done using your transfer of development rights program. Some of the commissioners are new. Maybe you want to give a brief overview of what that is and how it works.
What the town has is a transfer of development rights program where for every 35 acres that you own in the township, you're allowed to build one house on that property. Rather than having those houses spread out throughout the town, one every 35 acres, we're trying to get them to put them where we would more likely want them, next to an existing subdivision. So we give them a building right where they can move that building right from that 35 acres to the parcel that we have determined is more desirable for that house. And then we give them a benefit by doing that of being able to build 8 homes. And then that 35 acres is deed restricted, naming the county and the town for any future use so that it could not be developed. It would eventually remain agricultural.
Chris, has how many people have taken advantage of the TDR program?
1.
And how long has it been? It's been around for a while, right?
Yeah, probably close to 20 years, I would guess, somewhere between 15 and 20. It was Buckley Estates.
Right, yeah.
So that's part of the issue we have in both our comp plan and our subdivision ordinance. We have a density policy that kind of limits the development to 1 per 35. With the TDR program, that makes it essentially 8 to 35. It's really not consistent with what we have in our ordinance. There's been a legal case that was decided in the not too distant past, last year or so, that it kind of cast into doubt whether you can even use a density policy, so that's a little bit up in the air right now. And to date, we've never really recognized that 1 to 8 ratio. I think generally the transfer of development rights idea is great. I think we've just never really put our heads together and come to an agreement on how it really works in the ETJ area. So I guess for the specific issue of this subdivision in this area and whether it would harm the village at all, I don't think it really would. It's adjacent to an existing subdivision. The main concern we would have is when the village grows and runs into an existing town subdivision, there can be issues. You might have to run utilities around it, or we've had issues with connecting streets up, and it makes annexations more difficult, potentially.
Well, and that's part of why you have 2 resolutions in your packet. One was drafted by the town attorney, one's drafted by myself. And mine is more limited and really kind of goes to what Aaron was recommending in terms of a preferred and a secondary option. Because really right now, there hasn't been any discussion or any meeting on any of this.
I guess big thing is consistency, you know. On one hand, you know, we just had a development proposed and you're against that, but then you immediately...
I didn't say I was against it, I just wasn't for or against.
Right, but then we come back. But my big thing, and like with this proposed one, you're showing the street connections into the existing, and that's a big issue. You know, I want to see in our existing, we got an existing issue where it was a big deal to put the street connections through,
Right.
and I don't like that. And I've seen that over in the town of Sun Prairie, or I don't know if it's the town of Sun Prairie or Burke or whatever, over back behind American Family, there's a bunch of subdivisions over there, and I don't know what parties were involved, but there's a whole bunch of, I mean, this is an older development with a whole bunch of dead ends like that. And it's just Burke. But it's just kind of ridiculous, you know, and they're dead ends full of yard waste and trash, and there's a road on both sides with a big barrier between, and it's not just one, it's several of these, and it's just like, this is foolish.
Yeah, the current property is kind of run down, and we've had county zoning trying to work with them to clean it up. The barn is in disrepair and probably unrepairable.
Well, I wasn't talking about this one, I'm talking about these other,
Yeah.
you know, not even in our area, but I just want to see street connections.
Right.
So I'd like to be able to work with you guys to, you know, when we do connect up to the village, that we make street connections. So we make transportation maps, we've been doing them for years, you know, so it's not like it's a secret what we want to do, and those road stubs are there.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to see them, everything flow the way it should flow. And, you know, I guess on your end, you got to make sure that, you know, I'm not expecting you to build a highway in a rural subdivision, but at least, you know, have a little bit of width there so that in the future, you know that it has the potential to be a village street.
Yeah, our right-of-ways are all 66 feet.
Yeah.
Well, Bass Road looks like it was intended at one time, so what's the history on that? I mean, was that, it kind of tees right now?
No,
Heading towards that, and it
continues
stops.
past that Grandview or whatever, and it dead ends at the property line to the east.
I'm sure the intention was to continue it to N. I don't know when it was built. It may not have even been in our ETJ at that time, so I don't know that the village even had any say.
I mean, that subdivision is over 30 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just looked like it was intended to follow through to N at one time, this way.
Chris, has the town had any discussion on whether they plan to take advantage of the new law and opt out of county zoning, or?
We have not talked about it, and I have not brought it up because currently I'm happy with county zoning.
Yeah, there's the specific issue of this area and what do we do about it, and then I think there's kind of a broader issue that, you know, we don't necessarily know how many of these are coming in. We know there's at least one more. You guys don't really know what we're going to say about it, and the landowners are kind of just confused in the middle of it. So there's, I think, an opportunity here to have some conversation and kind of establish, you know, where it makes sense to use these transfers and where it doesn't, and just kind of set some guidelines that everyone knows what to expect.
Right.
So I guess I see two options. Either we can table this and work on that, or we could approve some variation of this waiver and then work on it, or I guess just take them as they come each time.
Well, I'd like to see it worked on in a broader sense, that we can come to an agreement on, okay, we're gonna allow this one and they're gonna interconnect roads there, but now we got a village town one that we're not allowing road connections. I'd like to see the whole works worked out
Yeah,
before we'd approve anything.
I think we can definitely talk about having planning boards and the village and town boards meet and discuss these.
I guess my
items
one
moving
caution
forward.
about that, I know with the merger and maybe other discussions like this that have happened kind of before my time. I think we tried to throw a lot of issues in and try to resolve everything, and it kind of got bogged down and never went anywhere. I think there's an opportunity here to focus on one issue and try to deal with it, and maybe that builds some trust and allows more conversation to happen, and maybe that gets amended later to include more issues, but I guess my recommendation would be to keep this kind of focused. And
Yeah, we've talked about that, and I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense to try to deal with some very specific issues, and then see if you can create an opportunity to talk about some larger ones.
Yeah, if we can, I mean, just have the guidelines up front. Okay, this is what we're gonna focus on, and not get into other tangents, I guess.
I'm a little confused on what the Keller property has to do with what we're discussing right now.
it's going to be a very similar request that's going to come in
Okay.
probably soon based on whatever precedent is set with this one.
Okay. So just looking at this map of the Keller property, it looks like it's a lot closer inside of the ETJ line. Is that correct or incorrect?
It's closer to the village. I think the issue with that one, it's very, very isolated. It's surrounded by wetlands and floodplains and slopes. I think it would be very difficult for us to ever really serve that area with utilities because of all the environmental features around it. We probably wouldn't grow directly around that subdivision. So I think this is another place where it might be logical to use some of these transfers. But I think that's kind of what I'm getting at with some kind of agreement where we have a map and say, these are areas where it makes sense and these are areas where maybe we don't use them.
Oh, just remember, I did offer that we could talk about boundary agreements.
You didn't show up
When?
in November. You were on the agenda.
Nobody ever sent me the agenda that I knew of.
Oh, well, that was Pat's last meeting. So.
Oh. Would have been nice to have a phone call.
I'd like to add something on the
Can
property.
sir, can you
step up
here?
Okay.
Well, Chris, yeah, just there's 2 chairs out there. If you want to stay, go ahead.
I got that one all warm for you.
My name is Bill Larson, and Bruno Keller and I used to own some land together, and we farmed together. I've known Bruno for many years. Bruno's land on the end of Coffee Town Road, the area that we're looking at for potential housing is rather marginal farmland. It's not the greatest. And I've got a development right that I don't really want to sell a lot because the land that I've got is very productive and I just as soon transfer it someplace else. I don't want to cut up my farm anymore. And as you mentioned, Aaron, all around the Keller area, you're not likely to be having roads coming in and out from other areas because of the wetlands surrounding it. But that land it's fairly high and it's kind of marginal. It's not the best farmland in the world. And I think it'd be better to grow houses than to try to grow crops. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess kind of going back to what you said, Aaron, a lot of this is location-based, and it's where this property is located. It looks like it's the last property that's located in our ETJ line, and it looks like it's in a spot surrounded all by subdivision and marginal crop area. It looks like it was intended to be subdivision. I don't know, I just think it definitely makes sense to talk about boundary agreements and future meetings. Definitely agree with that, but I mean, this is so far away from the village boundary line that looking at being annexed in is...
I think the concern, Kyle, is more of setting the precedent and somehow that if you decide to take an action on a specific property, just, what steps are taken to limit that until broader issues can be addressed.
I think with that in mind, Lee proposed a variation on the resolution, and then I had some language in my staff report as well, adding some of these whereas statements that really make it very specific to this property and why we would approve this one, with the goal of setting a precedent that, another request that's not similar to this, we would, consider on its own merits.
Chris, have you seen Lee's proposed?
I have not. You didn't get a packet?
Nope.
Well,
I guess I'd like to see us talk about the road connection issues, the, figure out where we want to allow these and not just start doing them one by one. I think we need to talk about it. That's kind of what you were more or less suggesting, Aaron.
well,
Before we enter into
one item or one thing that we could do is table this, add it to the agenda for next Wednesday, and then we'll make sure that copies of the staff report and the different resolutions are sent over to the town. And then we'll, between Aaron and I, we'll see if we can kind of coordinate what he was recommending, his staff report in with the resolution, and that way then you don't delay it too far.
Are you able to review this by tomorrow?
Sure.
You want me to come by and pick it up?
I'll email it to you.
Give you one before you leave.
Yeah, there you go.
I think there were some indications from your attorney that this was time sensitive.
Yes, there is. It's my understanding that there is an offer pending your action.
Is there any kind of, you are the interested landowner, if you want to come up, and if there's any deadlines or anything we should be aware of?
Thank you.
Thank you. My name's Don Vinny. I live on 2093 Highway 12 and 18. And the offer is pending to what happens with the village and the town. And the reason why we're going to buy it is we do have a lot of splits. And we own, I don't know, about 700 acres of land. And we put some lots in the woods a few years ago, and I honestly don't have a good place to put any more houses in it. And I thought, we've been running this land we're considering right now, and it's not our best land by no means at all. It's marginal land, and we always thought, with the houses that back up to the west side, the south side, and the roads that are there, we'd be willing to make a road, give an easement like 66 foot going to the north, because there's other future roads, I would say, down the road, I don't know how many years, of course, but that you could use to connect up to this too. And I think there's like 2 or 3 more dead-end roads that come up to this property. We run all the land along there right now, and hoping someday I own it all. But we're just looking, to connect roads also, and it makes sense for us not to put a house in the middle of all our good land right now, and that's what we're trying to stop.
Don, if the Plan Commission looked at this again on Wednesday, it just happened that we had this meeting and this other one coming up, that put you in any kind of time bind, or?
We've got about 45 days.
Okay.
And the owner right now, he's aware of everything we're doing, and he would even, he'd possibly go longer on the extension if we asked him, because he's really good to work with. And I'd like to get it done as soon as possible, that I know, because he kind of wants to know too. But I know he'll work with us. depending on what your schedule would be.
I'd like to make a motion to table this until the next meeting next Wednesday, the 9th.
Second.
A motion and a second. Do we have any other discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, motion passes. Comments from commission, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Comments from commission members? None?
I just have one quick one.
Yep.
So maybe I was a little misinformed when I volunteered to serve on this committee. Just a general comment. I'm not a degreed engineer. I can certainly help where I feel I can. I thought it'd be more in the planning, like some of the discussion points tonight. So Kyle, I know you're on the village board. And obviously there's an article in the paper today, and there was one last week about the future long-term comprehensive plan of the village, and maybe if we can get some direction from the village board, whether that be now or after the election, I think that would certainly help maybe this group, and maybe I'm not the right person for this committee, but I'm concerned for the head counts in the schools. We've got the school referendum coming out. I don't think that is going to get, that's a separate issue altogether, but I think as a village, working with the town, we need to have some sort of comprehensive plan, which I know has been updated over the years, but
it's updated every year.
Every year. Maybe I need to get a little more familiar with that, but I'm just seeing schools at capacity. I'm asking for more money to keep the current schools just operating, not expanding, and that's a concern from just a village resident as a citizen member of this board.
Thank you for sharing that. We have had recent discussions regarding additional meetings, boundary agreements, meetings with the school board, meetings with the town, with the planning, all those topics. So it's definitely been discussed and is on the radar, and so that's good. Do we have any more comments? Yes?
I was just going to ask if maybe everybody could introduce themselves, because it's, I know who you all are, but I know you're supposed to be here.
Sure, I guess we'll start over here and work our way around.
And Don Ringmeyer.
Kyle Broom.
Mick Conrad.
Phyllis Jones Morrison.
John Russell.
Fred Schultz.
Lee Boucher.
Travis McDermott.
And Don was on the Plan Commission before. Mick is on the CDA. Fred was on the village board.
A long time
A
ago.
long time ago. In a galaxy far, far away. So
I had hair then.
There you go. So we're really pleased everybody has joined us. So.
Any future agenda items?
Well, the items we talked about tonight, but in addition to that, next week I can finally say we're going to review a site plan from Culver's. We had to kind of keep it under wraps who it was, but that'll be on the agenda for next week, along with a request for a CUP and site plan for a personal storage facility over in Cottage Grove Business Park. And then another ETJ CSM.
All right.
Just one other comment. I threw an email out to the group. I cannot make next week's meeting due to work-related travel, so we should still probably have a quorum.
We assume we'll have a quorum.
We can only miss one more of you. So.
That's great. We're tight.
Well, I have work-related travel too, but I should be able to be here. So I might be late. Traffic. If the interstate's closed again, I won't be here.
You have to split your per diem, John, with the rest of us when you're gone.
Yeah.
It's going to Fort Knox for a retirement seminar, so I'm looking forward to that.
Yes, when issues like that come up, just let us know as far ahead as you can. And I do appreciate everybody showing up tonight off schedule. It's great to have everybody here.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right.